My name is Sharon Sanders. I'm head of the United for Democracy Now! And quite a few other groups because I never keep my 2 cents out of politics. I want to thank you first of all for coming. We're thrilled. I'm not good at this, but I'm going to ask you if you can give a few more dollars to help pay for this very important event. Don't feel obligated, but if you can do it and dig in, great. We're going to do Q&A right now, and this is how we're going to do it. We've got, first of all, let me just say that if you have a card and it hasn't been picked up yet, raise your hands and somebody will get it. We're not going to get to all of them because we've got so much to do, but we are going to, I'm going to read the question, and then I'm going to have Dr. Stanley answer it. So we'll start. I've got a few here, and I do want to say one other thing. It's really important about what we've done today is because we have so many different groups from so many different parts of the spectrum, and we're not all going to agree. And my whole thing with this United for Democracy Now! Is that we come together and we put aside our differences, and that's what we're trying to do. So I'm going to, as I said, I'm going to pass these red pedals around for some more donations, and then I'm going to read questions. We'll probably stop this about 3:15 and then take a break. So the first question is this. You were one of the few intellectuals speaking out widely against fascism in the country. What personal challenges did you have to resolve to take up such a role, and what would you say to other anti-fascist intellectuals who are currently silent?
I don't think it's been hard for me to do this. I have enormous privilege, and I'm very fortunate. I took up this mantle well after I had tenure. I think the real thing, the real. I'm in awe of many of the people, of Alan Mills is here, Sharon, of the people who are doing the kind of work that needs to be done on the ground. Now, more intellectuals need to step up, it's true, but it's also the case that more lawyers need to step up, and more people of every class. We're in this together, and certainly we each should use our particular skills, and I think that in my case, my background in epistemology and philosophy, thinking about how knowledge works and thinking about how language works made me especially suited to think about what happens when people start saying very bizarre things in the public square.
Okay, thank you. Next question. Could you talk about the role of the Christian fundamentalist movement in the rise of fascism in the U.S.?
So in Bradley Hart's book, Hitler's American Friends, he has, I think, 5 chapters. Each chapter is about a different group that was connected with the National Socialists and supported fascism. One of the chapters is called The Religious Right. I should say that the fascinating thing about that Bradley Hart book is he has access to the Nazi archives, so he's tracking what the Nazis are, which groups the Nazis are following. But yeah, Father Coughlin in the 1930s, we were somewhat lucky, in fact, because one of the biggest fans of National Socialism, one of the biggest fascists, was Catholic, and there was a lot of anti-Catholic sentiment at the time. And so you had fascist Protestants and fascist Catholics, but there was so much anti-Catholic sentiment that there wasn't the kind of coalescing there. But yes, what happens with religious fundamentalism is religious fundamentalism has a danger because it's an authority structure, right? It's an authority structure. In religious fundamentalism, God is an authority, and so you're supposed to be in awe of God, and so it's kind of tempting, so religious fundamentalists can see in the structure of fascism something that reminds them of the structure of the ideology that they themselves had. There's Caesar, whereas democracy, there's no Caesar. So religious fundamentalism, in a democracy, yes, my poor cousins are ultra-Orthodox Jews and Trump supporters, and they belong in a democracy, but we have to be clear that there's going to be dangers to that ideology in a democratic society. We have to allow everyone freedom of worship, but we have to be open-minded. We have to be clear-eyed about the conflicts that are going to be between democracy and certain views.
Thank you. Next question. Please address the phenomena of normalization of fascism. Do you think this is already happening?
Absolutely, and this is what I'm working in detail on now, on the way in which talking about, so I don't think there's any question. We're facing a situation where the President of the United States is speaking about Muslims, about Mexican and Central and South American immigrants in ways that frankly, are the ways that people speak about others before they do mass atrocities against them. Now, what we don't know is how that process works. How does it work? In Rwanda, there seems to be some years of talking about a group before you start treating them that way. If you look at our prison system, you look at what happened, what we had is we had a normalization of speaking of our fellow citizens who committed crimes as thugs, gangsters, and then that enabled them to be treated horrifically and get horrifically long sentences and being treated in inhumane ways and creating this massive prison system. So what we have now, so we have in our own history, recent history, we can look at our prison system and say, well, what happened there? You started talking about people in certain ways. Politicians on both sides of the aisle started running for election by vilifying some of our fellow citizens. And then you had a normalization. People in the United States just can walk around, even though we live in a country where that incarcerates, vastly more than any other country on earth, as if it's normal. So we're used to that. So we've gotten normalization. My colleague Josh Knob has a research in a New York Times piece on this. He shows that if something is more statistically normal, over time people start to regard it as normatively normal, by which he means if something is statistically normal, people start to regard it as, okay, that ought to be normal. So what we've seen is this vicious and brutal way of talking about our fellow human beings. And that's going to normalize that way of talking about them. And it's also going to and history suggests it normalizes certain ways of treating them. And that process is one that we're seeing, I fear, come to fruition, for example, in Squirrel Hill, for example, in the horrific killing in New Zealand that just occurred.
Okay, this one says, I read a comment online that said, I'd rather receive false information, keep my conservative views, than receive true information and follow a socialist agenda. How do you feel about it? Or do you even want to comment? As it relates to fascist tactics?
Well, they just granted that a socialist agenda is true, so I'm fine with it.
How do you reconcile your opposition to policing campus speech with the argument that false speech paves the way to fascism?
Hello? All right. So I think that this is a problem. This is my book, How Propaganda Works, is about this topic. This is the challenge of democracy. This is putting this good question, whoever asked that, very good question. That is the fundamental problem of democracy. And that's why for a very, very long time, from Book 8 of Plato's Republic, all through to Hobbes, people thought democracy was ridiculous. People said, democracy, you're kidding. I mean, someone's just going to come and just be like, and just lie to people and grab power and, raise fears, present themselves as a protector, grab power, and that's the route to tyranny. So the challenge of democracy, we can never forget how difficult democracy is, and we can never allow the system to be. I think what happens is false speech becomes most tempting in situations where people don't trust the system anymore. So the systematic failures of the system that Mr. Trump quite rightly, as candidate, pointed out, as did Bernie Sanders, these are the things that make this particular problem of democracy, the fact that you have to have free speech, and yet free speech brings these dangers. It makes it particularly resonant. And it's why theorists such as Rousseau, who theorized about democracy, said you can't have large inequalities in democracy. If you have large inequalities in democracy, it will allow resentment, a more propre, in his terms, it will allow a certain kind of resentment when you have huge inequalities, and then people will be able to feed off that resentment with propaganda and demagoguery. So this questioner has seen the problem of democracy, which is how can you have free speech when free speech allows demagogues?
Okay, we're going to take two more and then we'll take a break. This one says, is the American military a defense against fascism or a threat?
The American military has been, in certain respects, a democratic institution. It's brought people of different races together. It's functioned in a way that has helped our democracy at various times. But don't forget, they did also fight the fascists. So, on the other hand, empire and fascism are connected. And militarism in fascist politics always involves this sort of praise of the military, this sort of elevation of military symbols. That's how it always works. And the idea is, because the military is an authoritarian structure. The patriarchal family is an authoritarian structure, and the military is an authoritarian structure, and private business is an authoritarian structure. So you get CEOs of companies, generals, and patriarchal family structures being sort of validated. So in a democracy, the military has a function. I would hope that the military does not sort of fall for this valorization of their symbols and stays a democratic military.
Okay, the final question, let me tell you, there's so many good ones, we could go on forever, but here, let me see if I can read this correctly. What you outline in the description of what is happening in America under Trump, sort of half a sentence, but then it goes on to say, is he smart enough to know exactly what he's doing in forms of fascist tactics, or is there a mastermind behind this, or dumb luck, or did they read your book?
I think you read some book, I think what requires strength and courage and intelligence is being democratic, not being fascist. So I think it's quite natural to be the macho guy who struts around and talks about how he can solve all the problems. I mean, does that really require a lot of intelligence? I also think that, if you read about the history of the United States, and if you read Bradley Hart's great book, Hitler's American Friends, you'll read about the German American Bund, and you'll read about the different groups that channeled this ideology in the United States. I mean, America first. Who knows what Trump was exposed to, what the president was exposed to growing up, for instance, from his father. But I think the idea that this kind of politics that I describe in my book requires a high degree of intelligence is wrong. On the other hand, I don't underestimate Mr. Trump. I don't underestimate him at all. He could be. He understands entertainment. One thing that Arendt tells us is that in fascism, the politics, the news becomes entertainment, and you become addicted to it. It becomes this spectacle where it just exhausts you because you're trying to, what's going to happen today? What's going to happen today? She talks about the news turning into spectacle. And I don't think there's any question that the president is a master at that, at transforming the news into spectacle.
Okay, with that, we are going to take a short break. We encourage you to talk to Professor Stanley and buy his book and have him sign it. We also encourage you to go back and have snacks, and hopefully some of you will come back and join our discussion about what we feel are some of the solutions. Let me just say that my group, and Refuse Fascism, we're not on the same page, but that's the whole what we're about. So we'll talk about that, and then we'll get your input as to what you think. So we encourage you all to stay, and you know, it's a beautiful day, and just enjoy it with us. Thank you.